you hear me? Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate that, and I hope you'll enjoy the show. I think you will. And before I get into anything else this evening, I would like to heartily thank Don Tessier, my friend, for standing in for me on this program to host it for the last 2 weeks. I'm sure he did a stellar job, and that it means a lot to me to have him willing to stand in. So thank you, Don. And also, I just wanted to mention, I was thinking about the holiday coming up, Easter, and I hope and I encourage each one of you to attend church this coming Sunday and bring your children, bring your grandchildren, and have them learn about the religious history of our country. And then my next thing that I want to do is introduce my guest, a return guest. Welcome back, my friend.
Glad to be here, Linda.
Guy Page, a very busy guy who drove all the way here from Montpelier.
Right.
And so I very much appreciate that.
Sure.
And you're affiliated with the Vermont Energy Partnership, Divestment Facts, the Vermont Alliance for Ethical Healthcare, the Church at Prison. I'd like to hear a little bit about that, even though it's not something we plan to talk about.
Right.
And you're the producer of State House Headlines.
Headliners.
Headliners.
Yes.
Excuse me.
A clunky name.
No, it isn't. I kind of like it. And so, yeah, that's a publication, if you will. That's is it usually tied in with True North reports?
No. It's actually printed now in 4 or 5 different media.
Wonderful.
Including the state's newest online newspaper, the Vermont Chronicle, which I started.
Did you really?
I decided I might as well. It's not very ambitious, but anyway, yes. I write 1 or 2 columns a week, mostly on what's going on in the legislature.
Perfect. Well, that's something that everybody needs to know about.
Sure.
The more we realize what our elected representatives and senators are doing down there, I think the better it is. You know, we need to be informed, and when we're happy with what they're doing, we should let them know by phone call or letter or email, whatever. And when we're not happy, then we should let them know that too.
There are representatives.
Representing the people.
That's right.
Of Vermont.
That's
the
right.
citizens of Vermont. And nobody else.
That's right?
That's
the plan. That's what it says in the Constitution.
That's the responsibility. They take an oath, as I once did.
That's right.
To honor and protect our Constitution as well, which is critically important. And one of the things that I wasn't expecting to discuss tonight, but the Second Amendment, there is so much happening.
There sure is.
In terms of, off on a little tangent here, but I'll get back on track. And that is that all of these young students who left their classrooms, I don't know if there were millions of them around the country, probably, but I saw the setup on TV in Washington, D.C., and I looked at all of those people spread out all over the place. And then I looked at the stage. I looked at this great foundation, for the stage up above, and the technology. And there was a crane, a huge crane with microphones and taking pictures, a camera.
It's amazing what a high school sophomore can do when they set their mind to it, huh?
Isn't it? Yeah, made me a little curious.
Yes.
So who paid for all that? Who bussed them in? Who's behind encouraging these young people to go out and march for this or that
Right.
when they should be in school? I think they should have free speech. I think they should have the opportunity to express their views on the issues. I mean, it's very, very, very sad that we have had these mentally ill people going into our schools and killing children and teachers. It's beyond anything that I ever would imagine happening in this country. However, when these things happen, there are certain people in this country, and I will name who I think some of them are. George Soros, who is now a U.S. citizen, but he was born, I believe, it might have been, not Romania,
somewhere
Bulgaria,
in Central
I
Europe.
think, yeah.
Right.
And he's now in this country, multi-billionaire, absolutely hates this country. Absolutely hates this country. And I believe Barack Obama is working with him. He has this, what is that organization he has now, where he has people all over the country, 30,000 or so, working to stir up things around the country. You didn't know that?
I didn't.
Really?
No.
I can't think of the name of the group, but
But it's sort of like his version of the Clinton Foundation? Kind of like,
well, maybe, I don't know, but the whole objective is to, when there's an issue that they want brought forward, they have locations all over the country where they can pull people together and go out and march or whatever. Oh my goodness, already we have a phone call. Caller, welcome to the program.
Kirker.
Are you there?
And Guy Page, it's nice to have guests on the show.
Well, maybe you're not there.
I am here.
Maybe you're trying to be here. Well,
Call back.
Don't give up. Yep. Call back. Maybe something with the phone set up isn't quite assembled right now, but please call back, okay? We'll get that set up in a few minutes. Sorry about the inconvenience, but we really appreciate your call. We love to have people participate in the program. So give it maybe 4 or 5 minutes and then call back, okay? Thanks a lot. So anyway, I know that there are people deliberately stirring up the pot in this country, they're using these young people for their own purposes. And the young people have maybe not learned enough about this country, and they buy in to the rhetoric that's being sold to them. So anyway, that's my view, and I'm sticking to it.
Yep.
And one last thing. Folks, I want to make sure that you understand very, very clearly that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution says this: the right to keep and bear arms. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. No one should have the legal right to take away our guns. We all understand that there are people who will commit crimes, and they will find a way to get a gun for their ill-conceived goals, okay? And the problem is, the founders knew that if we didn't have the power to protect our individual selves, then the criminals who will find a way to get a gun will make us vulnerable. And I had a personal example that I could share, but I won't do that right now. But it was a time when, maybe I will quickly.
Sure.
I was divorced from my husband, and I divorced. I had 2 children, I was renting a small house next to the cemetery in Essex Junction on Main Street. And it was hot summer. And it happened to be the week of the Champlain Valley Fair. Mm-hmm. And so I had the windows up and hoping for a draft to come through. And I had this round floor fan, and in the living room. And so the kids and I went to sleep. And in the middle of the night, something made me wake up.
Wow.
I don't know what I couldn't explain to you how it happened, but it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm lying there in bed, and something doesn't feel right. And so I'm looking around like this and wondering what's going on. And it just happened that the door was here, and there was a full-length mirror on the wall beside the door.
Oh,
and
man.
So I glanced over there, and I saw this mound in front of the mirror.
Oh.
And I said, did I bring that fan in here? I don't remember bringing that round fan in here. And then I said, no, I didn't bring the fan in here. So then my heart started to pound.
Sure.
And I said, oh my God, somebody's in this room. Well, I didn't have anything to protect myself or my children. So I lay there for a few minutes, and I said, well, I don't know what else I can do. So I reached over, and I turned on the lamp beside the bed, and this man jumped up, turned around, ran down the hall, through the living room, over the console. He had pulled out all the rubber, around the screening. I was running after him saying, who the heck are you?
I'm sure that's what you said.
Yeah. Well, I was like this.
Sure.
So I called the police, and then I called some friends of mine who live down the street. I'll be right with you, caller. And so my friends came over, and he brought me a little handgun. And from that day on,
wow,
I knew I had to have protection.
Wow.
So anything can happen. So that's my story, and that's the truth.
Oof.
Okay, caller, thank you so much. I hope you are the caller who called earlier and didn't give up. But if you're not, welcome to the show.
Linda Kirker, I never give up. I always have to call this Republican show.
Well, I told you before, it's the facts. It's the facts, man. The people's show. Okay, what's going on?
Well, when you were talking about the Second Amendment, I agree that we should protect our Second Amendment, bear arms. But I also feel that AK-47s and machine guns and stuff like that are not a type of gun that should be used by local people. I know that your president of the United States, or our president, wants to ban the bump stocks, but he doesn't want to do anything else. Is that because of the NRA? Because of a lot of Republican Democrats don't want to challenge the NRA?
Well, I can't speak for the reasoning of the president or why other people feel that way. I'm not sure. I heard an explanation by someone recently about the guns that people use to hunt, and some of them are similar to an AK-47, but I'm not a hunter, so I really don't know what the rationale is. But you are well aware that we have many hunters and sportsmen, who shoot for sport or what have you in this state. And I don't know what the answer is. I do believe, yes, go ahead, Guy.
The Vermont Constitution, the 16th Amendment, specifically says that the right to bear arms is protected for our own self-defense. Now let's look at that question of self-defense. If the rest of the world, especially the criminal world, happens to be carrying semi-automatic weapons, do you want to be limited to a single-shot handgun or a rifle? Or is the legitimate self-defense for the law-abiding person to at least have the legal right to have the same kind of arms that the criminals do. I think it's very much in keeping with our 16th Amendment of the Vermont Constitution for our self-defense to be able to have the AR, which, by the way, is not automatic rifle. It stands for Armor Light.
Armor Light?
Armor Light. It's the brand name. Yeah, the AR-15, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not familiar with that particular brand of gun, but the sad thing is that people who want to commit crimes are going to find a way to get the guns.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they steal them, whether they buy them, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So equal protection.
Sure.
What about raising the age to 21, which is Montpelier is in session right now, trying to talk about the gun law and what changes they want to make? Do you think it should be moved to 21 years of age?
Well, that's another good question, and I can see some merit to that. On the other hand, when we have young people going into the military at age 18, that makes me question. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that the whole focus on limiting of gun ownership is it's looking in the wrong area to solve the problem. Why is this happening? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons. Perhaps gun availability is a small piece of that. But there's also we have a society of fatherlessness. There's no fathers. We have a society of violent video games. Just a little ways away from here in the town of Eden, at the town meeting, a teacher came up to the legislator and said, just so you know, I asked my kids in class yesterday, this is middle school kids, how many of you killed someone in a video game yesterday? Oh. Everyone in that class raised their hands. And then he said, how many of you killed 200 people in a video game yesterday? And 7 kids raised their hand. Right now there is an amendment that was temporarily introduced, been withdrawn for strategic reasons, that would establish a study looking at the connection between video game violence and school shootings.
Huge.
As it turns out, the Scott administration is actually going to be looking at that very question, so there's no need for legislation. But that is I have a relative who's a very liberal lawyer, and I expected him to be all in support of the gun rights, the gun control. And his answer was, you know what, that's not going to do anything. Our society is so messed up. And I got to say, if you want to look for a solution, I'm not sure it's in limiting access to guns, especially in this state that has the lowest number of murders in the almost statistically zero number of gun murders. Is that really what we should all be focusing on, or is it just sort of convenient reason to get what some people have wanted all along, which is control and limiting guns?
Well, I guess it's a difference of opinion of any one of us three. What's better for society? Our morals, there's hardly any morals left in today's society. Mm-hmm. The families are broken up.
Yes. The
mother and fathers are, either on alcohol or drugs.
Yes.
And hardly any people go to church anymore.
Yes.
I think that's a breakdown of our society, and until we get back to that, whether we got family morals and families going back to church, then we're going to have this ongoing problem with our society screwed up the way it is.
Yeah, that's sort of what my liberal lawyer relative was saying, is that, while society is messed up in all the ways that you described and others, this is not going to go away.
So, Dave, I'd be interested in what you think would be some possible solutions to the breakdown of the family and the things that young people are exposed to that they really don't have the ability to handle in a healthy way, and so much more. What can we do?
I think as families, as parents, have got to sit down with our kids and talk about, society and, the areas where we need to improve on, whether it's, our health or it's taking care of our families or helping families or doing Bible study reading and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think that we got to get back to the beginning where we start believing in God and that Jesus died for us on the cross. And Easter is the most important day of the year, and a lot of people don't even show up to church, during the whole part of the year. But on Easter or Christmas Eve, they all show up because they just want to be present, in the Lord's room, with all the other parishioners that believe in God and that Jesus died for us.
Well, you bring up some good points, Dave. I would like to see the churches come together in each community, and there used to be a meeting of the pastors from the various churches in this area, and my understanding is that it doesn't happen anymore. I would like to think that maybe it is happening, but the last I knew it wasn't. And I think if we who are Christians and understand the value of religion and how that brings more positive things to life and gives us morals and values and positive things in life, so we can be an example for others. It doesn't mean that there aren't good people out there who don't attend church. I'm sure there are many good people out there who don't attend church.
Yes.
But our children need this.
Right.
It's a foundation. And the other thing I have found from experience is that we need to talk with our young people about how important they are. Okay?
Yeah.
To their family, to their community, to their state, to their country.
Right.
I've had an opportunity to speak with young people about that. And they were very responsive. Yep. And I think every single one of us can take on that role when the opportunities come to give them a perspective on how fortunate they are to live in this country where they have freedom, they have opportunity, and so forth. Rights,
right,
which people in many countries do not have. And there are people who are wanting to take those things away from us. And that means that we as adults need to understand how important this Constitution is to our lives, to the vitality of our nation, and to the future of our country and our children. We want the best for our children and grandchildren. But if we don't speak up, we who understand why this is all so important to impart to them, then all will be lost. Mm-hmm. And so I implore all of you out there, you have something to offer, whether you think so or not. And it's to share with young people about the foundation of this country and why this country was founded the way it was, and how we, the people, need to stand up to protect all of those things that were given to us, and how lucky we are. That's I'm sorry, I'm preaching here.
Yeah, you had to turn into a minister. There's a shortage of them.
This is her pulpit right here.
You sent me an email, Linda, in reference to our new studio.
Yes.
It looks about like 4 weeks, maybe 5, because right now all the electronics are going to be in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
All the wiring has to go in, but the billing on the inside is finished. All we got to do is get all our equipment in there, which we've ordered, and should be up there, I'm hoping, in the next 3 weeks. So
wonderful. Well, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a wonderful improvement for the programs, the programming, and for the people who work here, and and for the public. I think it's going to be a great thing, and I want to acknowledge your leadership in this, Dave, and you know, your foresight to see that this happened. So thank you so much for what you do and for calling in.
Yeah, take it easy, and I hope some more people will call in. I know Don Tessier called from his son lives in Nashville. Is Nashville or Tennessee or somewhere down
Nashville, yeah.
there? Yeah.
Wow.
So I took his place last week because you were incapacitated. So he called in from down there.
Oh, so you hosted the show?
Yeah, I didn't wear a red shirt though. I didn't have any.
Oh, thank you for doing that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take it easy. Have a nice night.
You too. Good
Bye.
night. So let's get to the show's moving here right
Sure.
along.
No
But I
problem.
think that was all important.
Yeah, you bet.
Important stuff.
What's more important than, setting an example for kids for the next generation?
Absolutely. We have, you know what? Hopefully we built ourselves into someone who can stand up for what's right and be an example for the youth. You know, there's nothing greater than that,
That's right.
really.
And whether they say it or not at the time, they're looking
They are hungry.
Yeah.
Trust me.
for integrity.
They are hungry for knowledge, to know about life, to have somebody speak with them about the realities of life. It's so important, and how important they are.
That's right.
So I love doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, enough about that. So, how about the medical marijuana bill?
Oh, yeah. Well,
That's a Hummer.
sure it is. This is, medical marijuana is sort of old school because everyone's talking about, legal possession and stores, storefronts, but what this is, there's this bill. It went through the Senate, it's now in the House. What it really is legal commercial pot light, because it says that medical marijuana can be prescribed for any condition. Doesn't matter what it is. You can have an ingrown toenail, and if you can get someone to write you, or you don't feel good, or you've got a headache, or whatever, it doesn't matter. You can get someone to prescribe it, and believe me, they're going to have people who will prescribe it. There you go. You can have it written for anything. Up till now, it's always been, well, it started out with, it's just for cancer pain. Then it went to glaucoma. And then there was a few other things, but this one just throws away the pretense and says, we don't really even care. As long as someone will prescribe it and you'll pay for it, we'll give it to you. And the other thing about this is that in the early stages of this bill, there was what was called a local option, which is where St. Albans said, you know what, we don't really want any pot dispensaries in our town. Thank you very much, in our city.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Right. The early drafts had that in there. Somehow, the bill that finally made it through the Senate, that was taken out.
What do you know?
Yeah. And so I mentioned that to a lead sponsor of medical marijuana and to Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman, and both of them were saying, we didn't know about that. So these are the two main problems with this bill, and it'll be in the House Human Services. Carl Rosenquist, one of your reps, is on that committee, and he has his eye on it, and if anyone wants to know what's going on with it, he would be a good person to speak to.
Okay, well, that's great to know. So what you're saying is that the Senate bill,
Right.
Is
It's
it
gone
now in
through
the House?
Senate, and now it's now in the House.
okay, removes the option of a city or a town in Vermont
Right.
to ban the sale of marijuana for medical use.
And we all
Can't
know,
do it.
we all know that Montpelier, when it gets an issue that it really cares about, they're all about telling the local towns, forget it, you don't have any say, like windmills.
Oh,
wind
don't get
turbines.
me going.
I know, but it's the same idea. It's like, oh, this is so important. You towns and cities, Trust
We know
us.
better.
We know best.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the same thing again.
You have no voice.
Right.
You know what my philosophy is?
What?
Ready for this?
Okay.
Get off my land, get out of my house, get out of my car, get out of my food, get out of my health insurance, and let me live my life as an individual.
You forgot the checkbook.
Oh, yeah, get out of my checkbook.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a biggie.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I want freedom.
Yeah.
All of these impositions, all of these rules that are coming down from on high, they don't know better than I do what's good for me.
And you've actually been in the legislature, so you know that they don't know better. You know?
Well, actually, I voted against the bill for medical marijuana
Yeah, good.
when I was in the legislature.
Yeah.
And by the way, you mentioned they say it's good for glaucoma. Well, I had worked in the hospital and I knew a couple of ophthalmologists. So I called one of them and I said, it was actually David Zuckerman, I believe, who said, oh, this is going to be great for this and that and glaucoma. So I called the ophthalmologist and I said, is there any data? Has there been any research on the benefits of smoking marijuana that would help glaucoma? And he said, yeah, there's data. He said, it can be helpful, but you would have to be so high on the marijuana before there was any benefit. So what are you doing to yourself? Kind of losing your whole stability?
Right.
You know? So anyway, that's what I was told. Okay, and I understand here, an attorney for the legislature will conduct a quick walkthrough to familiarize the committee with S-216, which is the marijuana bill, right?
That was supposed to happen today, but they were so busy dealing with our gun rights that the House was on the floor all day, so they weren't able to have that little. I suppose the one silver lining of them slowly removing our gun rights is that they didn't have a chance to impose more medical marijuana. But all things in time, I suppose.
There will be no testimony taken and no vote.
At that meeting.
Oh, at that meeting.
The subsequent, if they decide to go forward with it, they will take testimony. That was one of the big problems with the Senate bill, that this bill that basically says marijuana for everything, and there were 3 doctors groups saying, what are you talking about? Please let us come in and testify.
And they wouldn't.
They refused. They refused 3 doctors groups saying on something as basic as a universal prescription of a questionable drug for all conditions. They did not want to hear from doctors. How irresponsible is that?
Very.
Yeah.
Extremely irresponsible. They don't want to hear, they just want to do what they want to do. And I want to know who's behind all this marijuana push. It's
a good question. I've been sort of wondering about the organizational part of that and the money behind it.
Marijuana Policy Project?
Definitely they're involved, no doubt about it. I think some of it too, you know, Linda, back in the day when I was working against smoking in the workplace, working for legislation getting rid of smoking in the workplace, I found that the most determined opponents of that bill were the smokers.
Of course.
Yeah. So, which also makes me wonder, in our legislature, it's not something they talk much about, but how many of them are just people who are saying, look, we don't brag about it, but we smoke, and don't tell me I can't. I mean, I don't know that, and maybe it's a little unfair for me to suggest it, but I'm suspecting with some of them, I might be on firm ground.
Or maybe they are a farmer and they want to sell it.
Yeah, I asked David Zuckerman that question, and he said if there are a limited number of licenses, he won't do it, because he said that would be unfair to use his position to sort of get in the front of the line. But he says if there are limitless number of licenses to grow it, then he would consider doing that. Because he has an organic farm in Hinesburg.
I know.
Of course. Yes.
What are we doing to our society? Taking away, you know what, the more people who smoke pot, there's more potential.
Yeah.
If they need the money to buy it, for instance, maybe they're going to commit a crime. Maybe they'll break into somebody's house.
Sure.
Maybe they'll, I don't know. The ideas are endless.
And, employment, too. I met with an employers group, and one of the reasons they're against it is they're already having a hard time finding good employees. And here, these people would be, some of their employees work in heavy machinery. They're saying...
Dangerous.
They're dangerous, insurance risks, can't pass tests, and therefore their ability to bid on jobs is compromised. Vermont businesses is compromised because they can't get the employees they need who are sober.
So who's thinking of that when they're trying to pass this kind of legislation?
We say it and we say it and we say it and yes. So really the point is we just need to keep putting this in front of them. And those poor 5 teenage kids from Harwood who died in that crash, do you know that driver was high? He was high on pot. And the authorities sort of, let's not talk about that, let's not talk about that, and it finally did come out. So, and that's not just anecdotal. The Colorado statistics show a clear connection between pot legalization and more highway deaths. So fewer workers, less productivity, more highway deaths. Oh yeah, by the way, also more psychosis, more trips to the ER. What are we doing to ourselves? Why are we doing this? Why is this so important that we'll compromise expensive, personally heartbreaking things to create a higher incidence of these things just to make marijuana legal? I don't get it.
Well, there has to be somebody who's going to benefit from that. And I'm concerned as much about the young people. They will definitely get access to this. And their brains, until they're 25 years old, are not fully mature.
Yeah.
And talk about learning deficits and lack of motivation and falling asleep in class or whatever. This is so wrong. It is a purge on our society. And these people need to get smart and vote against it. Okay. Did we beat that to death?
I suppose so.
Oh, by the way, in your article, at least 189 of 351 municipalities in Massachusetts have banned the sale of recreational marijuana, according to the Boston Globe.
That's right.
So, in other words, the state of Massachusetts has given the option.
Right. The local
for towns and cities to say, we're not having this in our community.
That's right.
They'll be the smart ones.
Yeah.
Okay, how about the carbon tax?
Oh, sure. Well, the governor has been 100% fully against the carbon tax, and he's never going to change his mind on this thing. Let me tell you what happened. There was a bill that said, let's spend $120,000 to study a carbon tax. And the governor said, why in the world would we ever want to do that when I know I'm going to veto it anyway because it's a lousy idea? And I'll tell you in a minute exactly why it's a lousy idea. But so what happened is they said, well, gee, maybe it's not going to go anywhere. Let's try to get it into the state budget, to bury it in the state budget.
The 100,000 or whatever.
Yes, and in fact, in some way, they did. And I actually, last week, brought that to the governor's attention. And this is something, he had not heard about this, and I found out afterwards that they are going to address that fact, and that he's going to, well, would it be by amendment? Who knows? But they're going to try to
remove it?
Try to remove that, yeah.
Otherwise, I would just say, if I were governor, which we all know I'm not, I would say, put it anywhere you want, but I'm vetoing any bill, budget or whatever, that has that in it.
That's right.
Period. And why the governor will allow this marijuana thing, if he does, That boggles my mind as well.
Me too.
But $100,000 to study carbon taxation.
Right. Now, I have done my own little studying of carbon taxation, and I found out one very interesting fact. I wish I had the graphic with me, Linda, but it shows Efficiency Vermont has produced a map of the state of Vermont that basically says who are the economic winners from carbon taxation and who are the losers. The winners are all in bright blue, the winning areas of the state. The losers are in bright red. The losers are up in the Northeast Kingdom, the poorest region of the state. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who use a lot of fossil fuels, who don't have much money, extra money to spend on anything, much less paying more to keep warm in the middle of the winter. Mm-hmm. Winners, this is going to shock you, Linda.
Okay.
Shock you. The winners are wealthy Chittenden County.
Really?
Yes, because they already they don't commute as far, they live in smaller homes, they're newer homes, they're more energy efficient, so they already use less of this fuel. And they can, their ratio of income to energy expenditures is already quite high, whereas in the Northeast Kingdom, just to keep the car going and keep the house warm takes whatever extra money you have. So they're getting, and oddly enough, Linda, oddly enough, most of the sponsors of this carbon tax are from Chittenden County.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Go figure.
Well, they're not going to be adversely affected, right?
No, they aren't.
But the rest of us will.
Yes.
I don't want anybody, I don't support driverless cars. I don't support electric cars. If you want one, go and buy it. But don't make me subsidize that.
Right.
I feel that way about all of these things that are being pushed.
Yeah.
You want to put a windmill on your property and your town zoning says it's okay, you pay for it. Yeah. But stop, this energy efficiency charge.
Yeah, that is expensive. Yeah.
I resist that every time I look at the bill. I say, darn it. I make it, if they're in a free market society, Guy, if a business idea for a product or anything else has value and the people want to eat it up and everybody wants to buy it, then you don't have to subsidize it because there's a need for it. People see the need and they have a desire for it.
Create their own change.
But when you're trying to push something like windmills and solar panels and whatever else, these cars.
I have some good news on the wind turbine front for you, Linda.
Okay.
Just yesterday on WCAX, David Blittersdorf, who's the #1 developer of wind turbines of Vermont companies, said, I'm done with Vermont. He pulled one of his last projects, the Kidder Hill project in Newport. He stopped it, and he said on WCX, I'm going to go to some other states that support this more because it's just getting impossible to get wind sited in Vermont.
Well, that's really good news. I hope that happens. How soon can he move out?
I'm not sure he's moving, but his projects, he's going to be trying to build wind turbine projects elsewhere.
Well, I hope those people have some insight and some wisdom.
Yeah. There's some places, out in the desert or whatever, wind does make a certain amount of sense. It's just
it's not reliable.
No one wants to live near it.
It's not reliable. The wind blows and the wind stops blowing. The sun shines and the clouds come out.
Right.
So it's nothing you can depend on.
That's right.
And what Vermont's been doing, as I understand it, is that we have been generating power, but other states in New England are benefiting from that.
Right.
And that way they can say their energy up to speed, whatever it's called.
We sell renewable energy credits to fossil fuel generators in Massachusetts and Connecticut so they can look a little bit greener. But you can't be green in Vermont and green in Connecticut. It's got to be one or the other. So all that wind and solar power you see made in Vermont, that, for Vermont purposes, is not green. It's not reducing
It's not making
emissions at
us
all.
a green state.
Right. Making someone else a little bit greener.
Yeah.
So they can keep doing their thing.
Okay. Well, how about the Vermont Yankee? You want to
Oh,
talk?
yeah. There's some actually really good news here.
Good.
And some of it, I think, of interest to the Abenakis, who I know are, from my days of the Messenger, there's a community here. The Vermont Yankee
nuclear power plant.
Nuclear power plant.
Closed down.
Way the heck down in Vernon.
Yeah.
They closed down about 4 years ago. And see, with the nuclear power plant, you have to close it down. You have to decommission it. You have to completely clean up the site. It's a big deal. It takes about 10 years.
If you decide to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I didn't want to see happen.
Right. Oh, right. But once it does eventually close, you need to close it down right. You need to clean up the site right, which is what they're doing. And there was a big, long discussion between some of the anti-Vermont Yankee groups, the anti-nuclear groups, some business groups, the states, the health department, some 2 Abenaki tribes, where they said, how can we do this in a way that everyone benefits and the job gets done right? And about a month ago, they all came together and said, this is the deal. We have reached an agreement. I mean, some hardcore anti-nuclear people and Entergy and the buyer and a bunch of other people all saying, we got it. We have a settlement here that we're all happy with. And I just heard, I was very moved. A fellow named Richard Holshoe is the spokesman for the Elnu Abenaki and another Abenaki tribal group. I think it was actually the Missisquoi.
And they're
Abenaki.
located in Vernon?
He's from around the area, and the concern is that because it's right on the Connecticut River, that site had been a fishing ground, living, burial, possibly burial ground. And they said, look, we just want you to do a good site survey, and we want to see what's there. And we just want a seat at the table. We want to be part of this process instead of being marginalized. Mm-hmm. And the buyer of Vermont Yankee, a company called North Star, immediately said, absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You deserve that. And so from the beginning, this unpaid volunteer Native American man has been saying, you know what, we're being really well treated here. Our concerns are being dealt with by North Star. And I asked them.
Good business.
It is. And good neighbor.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So North Star, what are they going to do with this site?
They're going to take 10 years to completely
Decommission?
take apart the reactor, take down all the buildings, restore that site to literally a green field, a grassy field with almost zero radiation. You could live on that place, grow all your food there, eat the food, and you would still have like this tiny, tiny radioactive exposure. They're going to totally clean up the site.
Now that sounds to me like a huge investment.
Yeah, $500 million worth.
Okay, so how does North Star benefit from putting in that huge?
Because $500 million has already been set aside in what's called a decommissioning trust fund. Mm-hmm. Over the years, they've had to pay in. It's almost like retirement. Yeah, it's like a retirement fund.
The nuclear power plant had to do that.
Yes. And they've invested it well, and it's now worth $586 million, which North Star looked at that. They made a plan. They said, Joe Blow off the street, who doesn't decommission plants for a living, couldn't do it. But we can, because we know what we're doing, and we can do it in 8 to 10 years, which is, blurry fast in this business.
So do they get the money for doing that?
Yes, they will pay themselves for doing basically they will own the decommissioning trust fund and be obligated to do the work.
I see. Okay,
and if there is any money left over, it's theirs. Well, is that true? Some of it is theirs anyway, and they get 8 or 10 years of good business.
Okay, all right. Well, the closing of the nuclear power plant, which I greatly opposed, but nobody listened to me.
Me neither.
When it was 3 cents a kilowatt
Yeah.
for energy.
4 cents actually, but whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
close enough.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to me. But anyway, hopefully something good. The Vernon area was decimated economically with people who had been paid $100,000 or more a year,
Yep.
and the jobs at the plant left the area or whatever they did, and the businesses just all deteriorated. So hopefully there's some hope for them, for business to come back. This state, I look at empty storefronts around here, empty buildings. We've lost so much. I was stunned. I was by let me see, the mobile station on Route 7, and I looked at two former, I think it was General Electric and another company, and both closed for sale,
Wow.
Yeah, and we have them all over the area.
Yeah.
And the governor, to another point, the governor reported that he has, I believe it was 4 or 6 businesses that he visited, and he said each one of those companies could right now hire 20 to 100 people if we had the people who had the skills or were, not on pot. They could pass a drug test, whatever. So there are jobs here.
That's why Dustin Degree left his Senate seat, was to go work on just that project for the governor, because it's so important.
Well, I hope he's going to be able to have some success with that, because people are leaving the state. People who can afford to leave, who have been taxpayers. I think the governor said 2,000 taxpayers left
Yes.
in recent times.
Yep.
So what happens? And we have to cut our spending too.
Yeah.
Okay, the Homeless Bill of Rights.
Oh, this was interesting, yes. A representative out of Waterbury, Tom Stevens, was concerned, and with some legitimacy, I think here, that homeless people were unable to, and sometimes unable to get jobs and receive benefits and get things that, most people sort of take for granted because they didn't have permanent addresses.
These are Vermont citizens?
Well,
American
whoever is in Vermont and you don't have a permanent address, you're on the street.
They're on the street.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're homeless. You have no place to stay.
Okay.
And in the old days, Linda, when you and I were younger and rent was cheap, that was hard. But I have a family member who's employed and has a separate income, and he has to spend 50% of his income on the cheapest apartment in Burlington because it's so expensive.
Oh, Burlington's really bad.
So one of the reasons you see so many out in San Francisco, so many homeless people, is because, not just because, there's drugs and all that stuff, but because it costs so much to rent a place.
Yeah.
So there is a problem there that he's trying to address. But the business community and the League of Cities and Towns said, well, we get that and we want to help with that, but we don't want to enable and empower homeless people to just camp in front of our businesses and bother our,
No.
We don't want to empower
Loitering.
antisocial behavior. So there's a legitimate need, but there's also a concern there. And right now the bill is not going to be voted out of committee and onto the floor.
How many homeless people do you think there are in Vermont?
I don't know. There is actually a number. I heard it, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, I think something needs to be done to work with those people.
Yeah.
I don't know what the solutions are, but I don't think we should just leave them,
Right.
out there, whether they have drug problems, whether
Yep.
they have PTSD from the military, whether, you know, whatever
Both of
it
those.
might be.
Yeah.
So, okay. We have to have hearts, you know, but then they have to want to help themselves too. And I did some research on PTSD to give presentations, training when I was in the State Guard, and it was really, really interesting. All the ramifications of PTSD, how it affects every aspect of life. It's really tough.
Wow.
Okay, we're running down to the last 4 minutes, so before I bring up another topic, is there anything that's burning in your heart that you want to make sure you say tonight?
There are a lot. I give credit to the people in the orange vests who are going down to the State House. They are filling the halls. The people
orange vests.
Yes,
the
people
gun rights
yes,
people.
and they are doing their best, and it's very frustrating for them. But if you're one of those folks, and if you want to protect your God-given right to bear arms, I encourage you. Now is the time to be down there.
Yeah, Vermont Guns, I get their emails.
Okay.
And I did send an email out I wrote a note to my legislators up here.
Good.
I got Evan Hughes sent me a little
Oh,
thank
yes,
you.
yes. Yeah, he's doing good work.
But we, folks, I'm telling you, there's nothing more important than we, the people, standing up for our Constitution, our Bill of Rights as human beings, as individuals, our religion, the education of our children in this country. It's like 34th or 36th in the world as far as, outcomes for education. That's totally unacceptable. And what are we doing anything to stand up and say, this is enough, we're spending big money on education, and we want the best for our children and for the future of this country. And our teachers deserve to be teaching in a system where they feel empowered and where they feel like they can make a huge difference without the federal government telling them what they're going to say and do in the classroom. We need to decide that at the local level. Last minute, almost 2 minutes left.
Sure.
What, do you want to add anything to that, or?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So what concerns you the most in this state? You have 1 minute and 33 seconds.
I think the failure to keep our eyes on the prize of what really counts, and which every year in election it's all about, we're going to be good for jobs, and we're going to do something for the middle class, and we're going to help people be prosperous. And I will give our governor credit that he is, although he's been criticized for some things, as far as the spending decisions and keeping the taxes down, he really is trying hard to hold that line the way no one in recent memory has. So there are things that people are criticized about, and perhaps justly, but in terms of taxes and spending, he has done what he said he would do.
Well, now he needs to, we're spending a great amount of money per pupil in our schools, way above the national average. There's no excuse for that.
Right.
We need to get down to the nitty-gritty, and it's about the quality of the product, not the huge amount of money that we're spending for whatever. and we need to join the rest of the country and cut our spending for education. So we're down. Hey, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Linda. Always
Great
fun.
job. Great job as usual. And folks, time is up. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you again next week. Good night.